Morning, let's stand and turn to the book of Romans. Romans, more doctrinal epistle in the Bible. Romans chapter 1, and we will look at verse 13, but we will be keying in on verse 16. Verse 13, Romans chapter 1, verse 13. Now I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that ofttimes I purpose to come unto you, but was led hitherto, that I might have some fruit among you also, even as among other Gentiles. I am debtor both to the Greek and the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. Verse 16 for our text today. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greeks. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith. I want to talk this morning about I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. Can you raise your hand and say, I'm not ashamed? Paul, the writer of this epistle and this book, is now giving the saints in Rome some encouraging words while he is still ministering in Corinth. His desire was to always go to Rome, but things occurred that every time he started to go to Rome to preach and to deliver the word of God, something came up. So he decided to write to the church of Rome and give them some words of consolation, some words of hope, some words that would make them hold their head up while they were going through persecution and all the anguish that many of them perhaps were going through. That there's some things in life we're going to always face, but you have to learn to keep the faith and be strong in whatever you go through. And it's always good to have somebody to write you a letter of encouragement or to pick up a phone or to text you. I'm starting to get more into social media now, that we are now on podcasts and Spotify, and daily they are putting out messages that people can ride to work and listen to podcast messages of hope as we continue to reach around the world through social media. Have a young lady that sits there every day and sending out texts and thoughts from the pastor to you, words of comfort, because you need these words. And listen to them and pay attention to them as you go to work, driving, at home and back. Because when you have somebody encouraging you, it gives you strength. And sometimes you know the word, but you need somebody to just encourage you in the word. It's a lot of things we already know, but it's more power when you go around people that's encouraging you. When people have a drug addiction, they go to their meetings and they sit there and they get strong. If you're going through something, you need somebody around you that can identify with what you are going through and understand your pain, and you have to talk it out. And that's why church is so important. That's why some people want to come to church, because they need each other. We all need each other. We draw on each other's strength. Oh, yes, it's all right at home, but it's nothing like being there. And Paul is saying to them, I want to give you some encouraging words. I want to come, and I'm planning to come, and I am coming. I am coming. You know why I'm coming? Because I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, here was a man in our text today, had a lot that he could say he was ashamed of when it comes to Jesus Christ. Here was a man that was a Jew, and if you know, Jews had very strong feelings about their religion, and they didn't want nobody tampering with it. They believed they were God's chosen people, and that they were only one righteous actually in the sight of God. They believed everybody else was a Gentile, was considered a Gentile dog because they ate food that was unclean. The Jews felt that they were God's only chosen people and that God only dealt with them and nobody else. They did not have they didn't know that God was using them to save everybody else, but they felt they were God's special one. And him being a Jew, that made it even more that he would be embarrassed and ashamed of this gospel of Jesus Christ because they did not accept Christ as the Messiah. They believed that he was from a family that didn't honor them. They believed that he did not represent them, and many of them thought he was crazy, and many of them turned on him. The Pharisees hated him. The Sadducees hated him. The whole Jewish nation did not even recognize him, or they wouldn't have killed him. And he had all the right to hate this gospel of Jesus Christ because he was a Jew. He also had all the right to not be to be ashamed of this gospel because he was an intellectual. He was a scholar. He had been trained, and he had been brought up in Tarshish, so he knew the word as a Jewish would know it. And he knew what the Greeks and all the philosophers thought. He was a brilliant scholar, Paul was. Some people say he had 2 PhDs. He could speak several languages. So intellectually, he had all the right to be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are some people today, intellectually, are ashamed of the gospel. They feel it's foolish. To the Hellenistic world, it was certainly foolish. And how could you believe in some man that comes from some virgin, a poor little girl in some little village nobody know about, coming up talking about he is our Messiah? How could you be an intellectual man believe in somebody talking about go the second mile and talking about going up is the way up and instead of coming down is the way up? How could you believe this foolishness of the gospel about all the things that Jesus is teaching? It didn't make sense to the philosophers, and many of them today now are very educated philosophers, do not believe in the Bible because they're so brilliant. They're so, in other words, I hate to say it, you're so smart you have become a fool. And I'm going to preach about soon about in the beginning, God. There's no way in the world you believe this world just came from a big bang. You got a watch. Yes, it may rotate and do things, but you got to wind it up. Or somebody made the watch. You can't have a watch without a watchmaker. I don't care how long that thing runs. It's going to need batteries. It's going to run out, but you can't have all this world without a maker. But a fool has said in his heart, there is no God. So when you think about a man like Paul, as smart as he was, he had all the reasons intellectually to believe that this gospel was not good. Socially, people feel like sociologically that the gospel is not good. They are ashamed of the gospel because when you get around certain friends, you don't like talking about the Bible. When you go to church, some church folk don't even like talking about God. There are some people ashamed that you bring up the name of Christ on the job. We won't take no Bible to work, and some of you now will take out your cell phone and you'll read the Bible on your cell phone, but you won't take one because you're ashamed for people to see you with a Bible in your car. You're ashamed for them to see you with a Bible on your desk. Some of you are ashamed to even read the Bible. My God. So because you why? You lose